Welcome to Center Cup. I am Nick Newmeyer and only Nick Newmeyer today. Will and Kyle are unable to make it, but that's okay. We don't need them. We're gonna go through. We got a good week of golf ahead of us with the John Deere Classic in our home state of Illinois. So we're gonna go through that. But first, we'll take you through some bit of recent news. We have the 2026 Open Championship qualifying was finalized this week. We have some names to go through. Some of the notable names that we've seen were James Nicholas advancing, a bit of a YouTube personality. He made it through qualifying to the U.S. Open, hit the very first tee shot in his home state, which was a very good story. He will once again be playing in a major. Um, Decent year for he's had a couple, or not actually, now that I'm looking at him, more than a couple missed cuts on the Corn Ferry Tour, but he won the Astara Golf Championship in February. So interesting to see what he could do at the Open Championship. Some notable missed cuts. We have both of the Bryan Bros missing the cut. Wesley and George were trying to qualify. They did not make it. Wesley apparently missed a 7-foot par putt to force a playoff, which is just absolutely gut wrenching. And then, speaking of gut wrenching, Sergio Garcia also missed the cut. He shot a 68 in his first round, went to the clubhouse to have a little lunch, made the incredible decision to have a plate of lasagna in between rounds, and then told reporters after a 75 in his second round that he thought he was going to puke after every hole. Not quite sure who eats a plate of lasagna before a round of golf, but that's Sergio Garcia is doing a lot to put us on his radar this year, or put him on our radar rather. Not a lot of it is due to actual golf. So always an interesting figure to follow, Sergio. But we will keep track, and we'll probably do a lot more Open Championship content much later in the month when it's time for the actual championship. For now, we'll stick to the matter at hand, and that is the John Deere Classic at TPC Deer Run in Silvis, Illinois. This is a tournament that, for all intents and purposes, this is a filler week on the PGA Tour. This is, we're done with this. We're done with the signature events for the year, and we have the Scottish Open coming up next week, and then the Open Championship after that. For now, this is kind of a filler week. Give some of these players a week off so that they can rest up and get ready for the year's final major. But that doesn't mean it's a bad week by any means. Just looking at, we have it's at TPC Deer Run for, I believe, ever since 2000, I believe it's been hosted at TPC Deer Run, which is a fun venue, honestly. You look at some of what actually is required to contend there, it basically turns into a birdie fest every year. I think the winning score of every single tournament was it was 18 under or below for the last 16 years, I believe. So it's going to be very important for people to make some birdies early and, just keep firing, especially Sunday is often known as just kind of that sprint to the finish line. It's an interesting course in the sense of it's a long course. It's 7,300 yards, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be a massive driver of the golf ball in order to contend there. You have it's a proper mix of just sort of undulation and hills to where if you're accurate and you find the fairway, you should get a nice kick out and you should be able to get a bit more distance on your drives, have a nice shot in. If you miss the fairway, though, you're often going to find yourself, it's not super penalizing, but it's more so like angles. It's going to be hard to get a good angle to attack the pin if you miss the rough. So fairway accuracy is going to be very important, as along with just distance to get yourself those crisp wedge shots to sort of just attack those pins, put yourself in good positions. That means ball striking, just iron play is going to be very important as well. And then putting is going to be very important as well, because if you're gonna have a birdie fest, you're going to need to hole some putts. And so, I sound like Will, just going through what is the most important thing on the golf course, and then just listing pretty much every single aspect of the game. So, looking back at some of the previous years, this is a tournament that, even though it doesn't necessarily have the star power, it does give you a lot of good finishes. So last year we had Brian Campbell winning in a playoff over Emiliano Grillo.
2 years ago, Davis Thompson set the scoring record of the tournament at 28 under par, which is absurd at a non-Kapalua course. Twitter god Michael Kim won in 2018, his only event on the PGA Tour. Bryson DeChambeau won in 2017, who, if you hadn't seen, he actually posted a very interesting video on his YouTube account of just going through his US Open and going through what basically went wrong throughout the week. He kind of took you through a lot of the videos on the broadcast and just sort of talked you through each shot. And it was really interesting. You know, we didn't hear from Bryson after the US Open. He did not speak to media after his missed cut. And it was really good to see him just sort of own up to his recent play. Like he had said, you know, he's not happy with how he's playing. It's embarrassing. It's not what he wants to do. And just on top of that, just, you know, I appreciate just his willingness to come forward and do that in the first place. He did talk about, you know, just sort of the distractions of, or the perceived distractions of YouTube and Live Golf and whether or not that affected his play. He did say that he did not believe anybody who says that. I think he said everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but people kind of just see what they want to see, and that what is actually happening is that he's been working harder than he ever has in his life. And sometimes, you know, you just don't get those good breaks, and that's golf. Whether or not you agree with that, it was a very interesting watch, just seeing him go through each shot, talk you through what his thought process was, where he was aiming, what the wind was doing. It's a technical aspect of the game of golf that we don't typically get. Bryson has often been one of the more technical players of just technical golfers in general. And so just hearing him talk through those shots was very interesting. And I would love to see more content out of him in the future. But anyway, back to the John Deere. And then our last notable finish that I want to talk about is, you guessed it, Jordan Spieth in 2013 and 2015. In 2013, he became the youngest winner in the modern era of the PGA Tour at 19 years old. He's the first teenager in that modern, and unless we're counting like the 1940s and 50s, he is the first teenager to ever win on the PGA Tour in the modern era. Obviously, 2013 was when he holed out that bunker shot on the 18th hole to send it to a playoff where he eventually won. He has a thing for bunker shots and playoffs in his career, obviously at the Travelers, and then really good bunker shot at the RBC Heritage in 2022 as well. And so, and then he came back after winning both the US Open and the Masters in 2015, and then just won there as well right before the Open Championship, which he did not win. But yeah, Jordan Spieth is very much a player to look at. We'll get to him in a minute, but I just wanted to just sort of take a look at, you know, we're not going to get as technical as we do in typical episodes just because, you know, a bit of a one-man show today. But I wanted to take you through some of the players that I have my eye on, some of the players that I'm looking at. This is a bit of a tough field to really gauge. We only have 2 players in the top 20 of the world in attendance this week at TPC Deer Run. So that means there's no one that really has like a true advantage at this course. And I think that means that whether you're ranked, you know, 20th in the world, whether you're ranked 200th in the world, if you can get hot for 4 holes, you have the ability to really strike at this course. And I think that makes this tournament, even though it's not the strongest field on paper, I think this does make it a very interesting tournament. So just looking through some of who I think are some names to contend this week. First off, we have Ben Griffin, who had a really good year in 2025. Not the greatest start to the year for Ben Griffin, but he really has sort of come to form. He has 6 top 25 finishes in his last 8 starts. Not necessarily the strongest driver of the ball in terms of distance, but he's accurate enough to where that's not really going to hurt him too much. I think what really has me high on Ben Griffin, and we'll see, we'll make our postings later so that you know that we're playing fair as we always do. He's my pick for this week because of his putter. I think he's one of the most elite putters on tour consistently. And as I said earlier, if you're going to survive and contend at a birdie fest, you're going to need to hole some putts. And Ben Griffin is probably one of the best people in the field to do that. He finished T5 in 2024 and then came back and missed the cut in 2025. So a bit of a volatile course history there, but we'll see if he can fire on all cylinders. I think that he can definitely contend here. Chris Gotterup is another interesting name. He had 2 wins earlier in the season at the Sony Open and the WM Phoenix Open. Hasn't really been too much in contention since then, but he's someone that just straight up mashes the ball. Like, he's one of the best drivers distance wise. Accuracy is a little bit of a question mark, and that's where I think at a course like TPC Deer Run, accuracy is what's going to be a little bit shaky for me. I'm not entirely sure if that's going to translate, but we'll see. I think he's another one where the putter has been very hot lately. Um, he's someone that he just has the potential to overpower the course. There's a couple holes out there that if the wind is blowing at a certain direction and you have enough power, you could even drive some greens. He's someone that with his driver, if he can at least keep it on the planet, I think could be a very interesting pick this week. He hasn't finished in the top 10 of a tournament since the PGA Championship. So interesting, but I don't know. He's a player that could very much factor into this weekend if he could put together a good result with his driver. And that brings us to the long-awaited debut of Jackson Koiven, the Wonder Kid. DraftKings has him ranked third in total odds to win this week, which I think is just absolutely absurd. But if you really just look at some of the odds, like he is a very intriguing pick this week. He finished 23rd at Shinnecock Hills at the U.S. Open, tied for the low amateur with Ryder Cowan. He's looking to be the first player since Russell Henley at the 2013 Sony Open to win on his PGA debut as a professional. I don't know if he could do it, honestly. Like, you don't want to put that much pressure on him, but at the same time, like, he's a very good player. He had 4 top 10 finishes last year just on sponsors exemptions, including at the 2025 John Deere. He finished in the top 5. So this is a player that knows this course. This is a player that is a national champion. He knows what it takes to win. The only question is just how much is the pressure going to get to him? If he finds a way to stay calm this week and to just not let the moment overcome him, I think he's someone that very much could factor into this week. I'm not going to put that pressure on him and say he's going to win. I think that'd be a little unfair, but I think he's very capable of contending this week. And from this weekend beyond, I'm really interested to see how he finishes this season. Just going down the list as well, on the topic of young guns in the field, Blades Brown is in the field this week. The Corn Ferry is off, so that means Blades Brown wants to use his special temporary membership to just get some FedEx Cup points. I think he's right on the cusp of the FedEx Cup playoffs right now. He's looking to just take advantage this week and try to get some more points. He's the same age. He's 19 years old. He's the same age that Jordan Spieth won in 2013. He's looking to be the second teenager to win on the PGA Tour. That brings us to Keegan Bradley, very much not a teenager, but, trying to find the connection of how he can claim this as a home event as well and bring the Northeast into this. I'm working on that. We'll figure that one out. We'll come to you with an update on that one. But he's an interesting pick. T14 at the Travelers this past week. 5 top 25s on the year. Respectable, not great. But I think where he's going to shine is with his ball striking. He's ranked 46th on the tour in strokes gained tee to green. He's someone that if he could put it together this week with the ball striking, I think he can absolutely factor in as well. And then looking at other people that have had just really great form recently, we have Tom Kim, who I don't think any of us were expecting to, we saw him at T15 at the RBC Canadian Open, which, was intriguing. I don't think we expected anything much out of that, much less a solo third at the US Open. He's one of the best ball strikers in that 100 to 150 yard range. He's currently ranked 16th on the tour in strokes gained approach. So that would make him a very interesting pick, if you want to ride that recent form. His putter has been solid enough, and his accuracy, once again, not a great driver of the golf ball from a distance standpoint, but that accuracy is going to pay off if he could put it together as well. Ryo Hisatsune is another name that I know Kyle is looking at. He's cooled off dramatically since the beginning of the year when he was very hot. Two top 25s in 10 starts. Putting has just been the massive Achilles heel. It has just not been great for him, and so I don't know. That's an interesting pick. You'd have to, maybe Kyle can defend his pick on Monday, but that'll be an interesting one to see. And that brings us to the two-time champion Jordan Spieth, who is a bit of an interesting choice. I say choice. I would not touch him with a 10-foot pole when it comes to picking him this week, just because it was a rough week at the Travelers, honestly. Like between filtering between the putters and the driver was kind of iffy, and just didn't really have it on the greens, just wasn't really able to, if it was a no cut weekend, so he was able to play the full week, but just didn't really have anything this week. But this is an interesting course. He had his press conference yesterday, where he talked about how just what it means to come back and play this tournament. You look back at, he's played it once since he's playing it this year. Obviously, he played it in 2024, where he finished T24, and then that's the last time he's been there since his win in 2015. So he won in 2015, I believe he was T4 in 2014, and then obviously won in 2015 as well. And he's talked about how certain courses on tour have a bit of scar tissue, or some of the proverbial scar tissue from just rough finishes. But this is a course where he doesn't have that kind of scar tissue. This is a course where he very much likes this course. He's played very well, and he has a lot of fond memories to draw on. Obviously, when he was here and winning, he wasn't the world number one yet. He wouldn't reach that until a little bit later in the season, but he was in the process of that dominant 2015 season, whereas now he's 32 years old. He has 3 kids, which there was a very wholesome bit in the press conference where he mentioned that his wife just loves bringing the kids out on the course just because it's lined with tractors and the kids just absolutely love it. I think that's absolutely awesome. But this is a course where he's had a lot of success in the past, and does that mean the game is in a good spot? No, it doesn't. He's still searching on the putting green. He had a decent day with the putter on Sunday, hold a couple mid-range putts, but nothing to suggest that he was really back and that he found something. I know he said that the TP Mills blade is going to remain in the bag this week, but whether that's a good thing or not, I'm not entirely sure. But he seems to think he's close. He's been saying it all year, where he knows that he can lead the tour in a particular category of his game on any given week, whether that's off the tee, whether that's around the greens, whether that's putting. He knows he's capable of leading in those categories, but he just can't seem to put it together all at once, which is indicative in his results this year. He has 8 top 25 finishes, has not been able to convert it into a top 10, but all in all, eight top 25 finishes is not bad, so to speak. I think if you look at him with the expectations of he's Jordan Spieth, you would think he would be a bit better. But all in all, it's been a very consistent year. I think more than people expected it to be. And so I don't know. I think a top 10 here would be great. I know I was looking at, when I was doing my research for this, the PGA had their top 15 power rankings, and he was not on that list. And it was just absolutely depressing that he was not in the top 15 of an event, or in the top 15 of a power rankings. So, we'll see what he can do this week. I think I would be happy if he was in the top 10, but you never know. And so those are more so just the players that I'm really looking at. I think let me pull up those power rankings as well, just see if there's anybody else that. So yeah, we got Keegan, Blades, Brown, Rico Hoey with 2 top 20s in his last 3 starts. We're basically looking at a place like this. We're looking at mojo, where you're gonna ride on recent form. He has a T26 and a T11 at TPC Deer Run. Not bad. We have last year's playoff runner-up Emiliano Grillo. This is an interesting, twice a groomsman and 3 starts at TPC Deer Runs. He had a runner-up in 2022 and 2025. Once again, 2 top 25s in his last 2 starts. Interesting. We got Sudarshan Yalamaraju in the field. He's someone that I definitely should have mentioned. T8 at the RBC Canadian Open. That kind of just reminded us that he existed in the first place. So we'll see. He kind of had his Linsanity run, if you will, early in the year, but sort of cooled down. So we'll see if he can kind of recapture that this week. Obviously, a weaker field, give him an opportunity to pounce on that. Obviously, we talked about Jackson Koiven already. Pearson Coody has 10 top 25s in 13 starts. You can tell just a victory is coming. He's 18th on the tour in converting greens hit into birdies. So that's going to come in handy on a course like this. I would definitely think so. Davis Thompson, as I said, won in 2024 with a 28 under par round. Or not 28 under par round would be incredible. 28 under par week. Thank you very much. He's 3 for 3 with a scoring average of 66.58 in 12 rounds at TPC Deer Run, according to the PGA Tour, which would be very interesting. Another player that doesn't really have a great year, but has very good history at the John Deere, Denny McCarthy, who just got he got a T14 at the Travelers for his first top 25, but he has T6, 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 T11 since 2022 at the John Deere. So very much a player that likes TPC Deer Run and could very much factor into this weekend. We got the Postman, JT Poston, who just won at the Memorial and won in 2022 at TPC Deer Run, T4 at the US Open. So interesting, very good form as of yet. So we'll see if he can bring some of that course history. And yeah, I think we've covered more so everybody. We'll be following throughout the week. Just pay attention on social media, some articles as well. There'll be a lot of people that could factor in. And if we're being honest, someone is probably going to come out of those players that I didn't mention and be a force in this tournament, because that's just what happens every year. This is a tournament where you don't need to be a great player to contend at this week. This is a very interesting course in that regard. So I think it'll be a very interesting tournament. I think this is one that, even though it doesn't have a lot of star power, this is one that I definitely have my eye on. And so just taking us around the world where we're at, the U.S. Senior Open is this week in Shadow Country Club in Columbus, Ohio, where Michael Block is in the field. That's always interesting. We talked about where he's just emoting on every single hole. He's probably going to have a lot of them in the bag this week. He's got a really good haircut. That's something that I definitely would invite all of you to look up. He has the words, obviously it's 4th of July weekend, so he has USA shaved into the back of his head, which that's Michael Block, if you will. I think that's just a very interesting, he's going to be the headline everywhere he goes, just because he's just such a fun guy, and it's just, you never know what he's going to do next. You never know what he's going to say next. He's very interesting in that regard. The LPGA is off until the Evian Championship, the second week of July. We have, that'll be smack dab in their major season. You have the Evian, July 9th through 12th. You have the Scottish Open, the week after, and then you have the Women's Open for the final major as well. So we'll keep tab on that when that comes back. And then the DP World Tour is at the BMW International Open in Munich. And that brings us to the Arnold Palmer Cup, which is a mixed event between some of the top collegiate stars in the world, the international and the American team. That's taking place in at Tralee Golf Links in Tralee, Ireland. The international team won last year. The United States is going back, looking for a good result on 4th of July weekend. Just looking at some of the names on this team. Team USA, we have the co-low amateur at the US Open, Ryder Cowan, Kiara Romero, Anna Davis, Caden Pope from Auburn, and Farrah O'Keefe from Texas, the NCAA individual title. And, we want to give some shout outs to our Northwestern Wildcats assistant captains, Emily Fletcher and Beth Miller as well. So best of luck to them, where they will be going off against the international team, taking on names such as Maria Jose Marin, Paula Martin San Pedro, Luke Poulter, and Malin Potgieter are some of the notable names on that list. So it's a very interesting tournament. It's a team event where you have the men's and women's teams are directly paired together and competing alongside each other. So it's a very interesting tournament. I think definitely one that's worth keeping your eye on. But yeah, that's basically all the tournaments going on in the world of golf right now. We'll keep tabs on them throughout the week. Pay attention to socials. Next on the tee, we're gonna have. We'll be back on Monday for our recap of the John Deere and just sort of going around the world, and then obviously on Wednesday we'll preview the Genesis Scottish Open. And so where did our socials go? They're lost. They're not at the bottom of the screen anymore. So I'm not the one that usually does this. So we'll bring them back. Okay, there we go. We'll get them back. So obviously our X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is at CenterCupPod. Our Instagram, centercup.pod. That's the same as the TikTok. Our email, if you want to, we have the running line of requests of what you can ask of Will in his emails. Just someone please email us if you want to ask him or Kyle where they were today, what they were doing that was possibly so important to skimp out on me and leave me all alone. Feel free to do so on my behalf. Tell them that I sent you. centercup.pod@yahoo.com. So that'll do it for us. As I said, keep track of our socials. We'll be bringing you coverage of the John Deere. Check on Tap Sportsnet for articles throughout the week, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Everybody enjoy your good 4th of July weekend.